We live in a country where politicians are more afraid of voters than voters are of politicians. That's how we want it. That feels filthier. That feels like a grosser part of rock and roll, but not what I think. And you know that.
Over to you, Chris.
I'm shook.
Cool story, comma, bro.
Welcome, everyone, to Whole Hog Politics. My name is Bill Sammon, joined by my old pal, Chris Stirewalt, who is the author of Whole Hog Politics, the must-read political newsletter at thehill.com. Chris, happy Friday the 13th. I want to close one loop from something that was left unfinished last week before we get into the serious matters of war and peace. And, you know, I guess the word that I need to say to America is the word Falco, because you know, we spent a fair amount of time talking about who was the only artist, German language, that wrote a German language song at the top of the Billboard charts. We never mentioned who the artist was. I never did.
We regret the error. We regret the oversight.
We regret the omission. And I dare anyone to go listen to that song, even today, Rock Me Amadeus, and whether you love it or hate it, I dare you to get it out of your head for the rest of the day.
Next week on Whole Hog Politics, Taco.
Yeah, that's right. Chris, I want to talk about the various elections that are in campaigns that are underway across the country, but we should start with the Iran war. And the first thing I want to talk about is this rise in what appears to be what authorities are calling a rise or a surge in domestic terrorism cases. And I want to get your reaction to whether that you think that has an impact on Americans' perception of the Iran war, which is very fluid, and it's quite a new thing. But let me just run through the examples of the domestic terrorism that the authorities are concerned about. One, March 1st in Austin, an immigrant from Senegal wearing an Iranian flag T-shirt and a sweatshirt with the words "Property of Allah" opens fire in Austin, killing 3 people, injuring 15. This is a day after the Iran war started. Obviously, this is the United States and Israel attacking Iran. March 7th in New York City, 2 men proclaiming allegiance to ISIS ignite homemade bombs that fail to detonate. And then yesterday, Chris, we had 2 episodes in rapid succession. One was in Michigan. An immigrant from Lebanon loaded his truck with weapons and explosives, rammed it through the doors of a major synagogue not too far from Detroit. Driving down the hallway inside the synagogue, which, by the way, had 140 preschool children in it, hits one of the security guards, but is then taken out and killed by security guards. And then within 90 minutes in Virginia at Old Dominion University, an immigrant from Sierra Leone who had been previously convicted of supporting ISIS walks into an ROTC class and shoots the instructor, who is a retired military officer, shoots a couple of the students in. He kills the instructor. He injures several of the students. They tackle him. One of the students, a ROTC candidate, actually stabs him to death. I mean, so disturbing, so crazy, all of these things. So again, does this impact Americans' larger view of what's happening in the Middle East as the war now approaches the 2-week mark in Iran?
Well, I mean, let me take the first the why, and the why here. So Americans have wondered whether or not Iran and the Americans in our military and Americans in our homeland security apparatus, but also the general public, have reasonably wondered, what will Iran do to retaliate against the United States? And we know about Iran's cyber weapons capabilities of the past. Will they target some U.S. city and shut off the water supply, or what might they do? that we know that Iran has chemical weapons, wanted to have biological weapons, might have fissile material enriched to what degree we do not know, but is it a dirty bomb that that Iranian terrorists would use in some sort of a coordinated strike in the region, or what about Israel? And so there's been a lot of conversation about that. And we don't know what the new regime, the son of Khamenei, whose name I haven't learned because I have a strong feeling his reign will not be a lengthy one in Iran. But his father's regime was careful, right, about we don't do enough, right? It was playing a game. They didn't go all the way to full enrichment. They didn't go all the way here because it was a long negotiation. The question that was asked 20 years ago was, is Iran a rational actor? And there were people who said Iran is not a rational actor. It is a maniac theocracy and bent on bringing about the end of the world. I think the verdict is in that in the previous regime, they were basically rational actors. They were stupid, but they thought that they were being careful. And that's all to say that large-scale attacks, 9/11 style attacks, not that Iran would have the capability to do that, but that a large-scale orchestrated, very lethal attack is not something that the previous regime in Iran would have thought would have been in its interest, because that will get you bombed, right? That will get you blown up. So they played this long game with the West. Well, now they are being blown up and they are having their leaders killed, and we're not going all the way, but we're going a pretty decent bit of the way. Does that change their calculus? I don't know. But the problem for Iran, even if Iran wants to follow this walking up to the edge and walking back, we're sending drones to this place, but we're not targeting that place, playing this longer game, radical lunatics in the world are not, they are ungovernable by nature, right? A guy wearing a property of Allah sweatshirt has clearly missed the memos. And the danger for Iran, and I guess you could say by extension the world, is that lone wolf, radical, weirdo lunatics will so incense the American electorate, right, that you would have enough of these and of a wide enough scale. I promise I will stop talking, but the Americans, sadly, and I think we could point all the way back to Sandy Hook, Americans have come to learn to live with a lot of carnage, right? Americans, we asked after every mass shooting for a long time, will this change the debate? No, it didn't. It never did. It never ever did. Not in a profound way. Not even the murder of all of those school children never changed the debate. So I think Americans can absorb these days a pretty high level of the kind of attacks that would have once been. Do you remember in California, it was a couple, it was Christmas time, I forget where it was, San Bernardino maybe, killed a bunch of people at a community center, and it was very shocking at the time. I think a lot of our ability to be shocked has dissipated. All that being said, if it's enough and if it's long enough, the American public will demand, they will blame Iran. The administration will encourage them to blame Iran, I assume. And then the demand will be boots on the ground, go all the way, kill these people, take them out. So that's Iran's problem is they can control their own people, but they cannot control their admirers in the world.
That's interesting because you make the distinction between an orchestrated large-scale attack that a nation could arrange versus these lone wolf attacks that are just inspired by what's happening. And ironically, those could still change the attitude of this country and to the point. I'm not sure we're and I don't think you're saying we're at the point where we're going to have boots on the ground, but but things do change. I want to ask one other question about Iran, Chris, and that is, you know, we are coming up. Today is day 13 of the war. To read the coverage and to listen to some of the commentary on that, you know, look, there are 99 legitimate ways to critique what's happening in Iran, and there's plenty to complain about and plenty to pick apart. But I got to tell you, this talk of quagmire and Vietnam, and we see it every single time there is a military conflict. I literally saw the word quagmire in less than 1 week. So I get all of the complaints about the war. I get the high gas prices. I get all of that stuff. But is it a little premature for everybody to be lighting their hair on fire and saying, when is it going to end? We're on day 13. And is it also possible, just possible, that, you know, Iran's losing, right?
Well, yeah.
They're losing the war, and you know, they're still causing an awful lot of mischief in the Straits of Hormuz, and but it feels, doesn't it feel to you like we're, you know, and Trump initially said this might be a 4 to 5 week excursion, to use his word, but we're less than 2 weeks in. Are we being too impatient, I guess, is my question.
Oh, I mean, look, I think the media coverage part of it is one piece, right? And you know what I say about media criticism. It's like asbestos abatement. You need specialized equipment. It's quite hazardous to your health potentially, and it's probably best left to the professionals. But you know, to acknowledge the media criticism part of it, war sells. And if you want to talk about the war and you are catering to an audience that hates Donald Trump like God hates sin, you want to talk about the war because it elevates the stakes, it increases interest, but you don't want to say, and you know what, you got to give the guy credit, the MSNBC segment that begins, say what you will about Donald Trump, but what an impressive, that is not going to feed the bulldog, right? That is not going to feed the bulldog. Similarly, if you're on Fox or you're on one of the other righty ones, if you're on one of the other righty ones, you definitely can't say we're leading with the investigation into the bombing of the school, and this is how a dumb siloed media thwarts civic reason and public discourse, because you have to choose, are you for the war or are you against the war? And a reasonable answer is, well, we don't know what it is yet, right? We don't, the profusion of rationales for the conflict. We did it because Israel was going to go. Actually, no, we did it with Israel. Actually, no. Actually, no. Actually, no. Has confused the question. And part of that is by design. Part of it is by incompetence. The design part is it's helpful domestically for a short-term conflict and internationally in any length of conflict if people don't know what the administration's doing, right? That there are upsides. Now, if this were to become more, right? If this were to become the hints that the president is sending now is that he's going to declare victory and bail out on this thing. And that is potentially problematic for Israel, is potentially problematic for others if the regime is left standing in Iran and what happens from there. But for domestic political purposes, the Washington Post had a poll on the war, and it sort of mirrored the Fox News poll that was taken right at the time that they were lucky. They were in the field. We talked about this last week. They just happened to be in the field when the bombing started.
Yeah.
And so we got this wonderful methodologically sound snapshot of like, okay, it was a Rorschach test. You don't know anything about it except for that it's going on. What do you think? And there was a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
The Post poll reveals a very narrow plurality in favor. I think it's 42 to 40. And that's the Democrats and the Republicans are a mirror image of each other. It's 85-15 and 15-85 or some version of that, but independents are opposed. It's like a 60-40 or something like that for independents. And the question on this conflict politically is you can't sustain a long war that involves fatalities of U.S. troops. You can't do that. And you can't have a war that further drives up prices in the United States if you don't tell people what it's for. Right?
Yeah.
If you don't say looking at the leaks that are coming out of the administration, where people, JD Vance, you can clearly see positioning himself over here like I was always, let it be said that I was always grousing about it. The president even acknowledged his grousing, right? And said, JD, maybe not as much in favor of this. And Marco Rubio and his faction want credit because they think they're going to win, right? They think this is going to be good, and it's going to be Marco Rubio's project, and he's betting on success. And the Vance faction, both in, I don't know how much inside the administration and how much outside. I don't know who the leaks are to and how intentional they are, but are clearly positioning themselves to be in the "I told you so" position if this goes badly.
Yeah, and you mentioned competence as one of the possible criteria here. I actually think that it would behoove the administration when they're asked by reporters, but you said it was about taking out the nuclear capability, but then you said it was about regime change, but then you said I think the answer from the administration, probably they would do well to say, yeah, it's all of the above. There are a lot of good reasons to do what we're doing, but I haven't really seen that kind of messaging. Chris, you talked about Rubio and Vance, and I want to talk a little bit about that because you referenced a quote from the president, and I think we may have that quote, a little piece of video on that quote. And if we do, can we play that now? This is the president talking about JD Vance's opinion of the Iran war.
Mr. President, are there any points of disagreement between yourself and your vice president when it comes to U.S. action in Iran?
I don't think so, no. We get along very well on this. He was, I would say, philosophically a little bit different than me. I think he was maybe less enthusiastic about going, but he was quite enthusiastic. But I felt it was something we had to do. I didn't feel we had a choice.
The way he does that, the way he has it both ways, but manages to sow that little seed of doubt, like that this guy, there was some daylight between me and my vice president.
First, I just have to say, I was transported back 6 years to how was the COVID test? Negative, but very positive. It was it was very positively negative. JD Vance was less enthusiastic, but still very enthusiastic. He was very enthusiastic in his lessened enthusiasm.
Yeah, but you mentioned that there are signs now that JD may be in the background putting out the signal that, you know what, guys, I wasn't necessarily fully on board. If this thing goes south, I'm not on board. And I don't know whether that's true or not, but if it is true, and I'm a little dubious about it because it would be so dangerous and politically dumb, I think, for the sitting vice president to be, and here's why. It's smart in the sense of, like, if the thing goes south, he can say, look, I as you saw, I was not really on board. But the problem is that Trump, JD is so dependent on Trump's imprimatur for the next couple of years as he tries to succeed him. And Trump keeps flirting with this idea that I kind of like Marco Rubio. So I don't understand why JD Vance would attempt to distance himself from the president's Iran war plan.
There's a great piece. I put it in the note in the dispatch about it's called American Compass, is the think tank that both Vance in the sunset of the Heritage Foundation. This this think tank, American Compass, Orrin Cass is its
Yep.
helmsman, has emerged as for the, we'll call it the right that is not conservative, right? So these are nationalistic, non-free market, this is
Non-small government.
yeah, this is the what we used to call paleo right, the Buchananite right.
Yes. And they have a big influence now on people like Marco Rubio and JD Vance.
Right. Rubio, who had been a conservative after his presidential defeat in his little wilderness period, started to explore, Catholic integralism and what some people call common good conservatism, with a bigger government, a more muscular government, more economic planning, a more robust sort of pre-Reaganite kind of republicanism. And I recommend the piece highly if you want to understand where they are aligned, where Vance and Rubio are aligned, and where they are unaligned. And the foreign policy question for the nationalists or the right wing in the Republican Party was simple for a long time. We're not dumb. Do you remember the Obama doctrine? Don't do stupid bleep, but they didn't say bleep. Our doctrine is to not be like those dummies, George Bush and whoever. And that was basically what the new Republican foreign policy perspective is. We don't have rules except for to not be dumb. And that's been JD Vance's explanation for why he supports this intervention versus other interventions, which is other presidents were dumb, Donald Trump is smart, and so it's okay. And that can't last. And I think it's like this. Marco Rubio, you saw the report, NBC News had it, a bunch of people had it, that the president at Mar-a-Lago asked a bunch of his donors, hey, who do you like for 2028, JD or Marco? And the room erupts in applause and enthusiasm for Marco Rubio, because Marco Rubio represents, for conservatives and for the sort of old Chamber of Commerce coalition kind of Republicans, that what is derisively called the donor class, a great way forward, right? Like this is, hey, we'd love to have Marco Rubio, not JD Vance. But JD Vance's coalition is more potent, but more dangerous. JD Vance's coalition that includes Tucker Carlson, who was his sort of political godfather, right? Tucker Carlson willed JD Vance's Senate victory in Ohio into existence. He pushed him, and Vance changed his tune. That was when the metamorphosis of JD Vance from intellectual author, Trump critic to, you know what, Western civilization is about to be destroyed, and by any means necessary. And that posture won JD Vance the appreciation, admiration, and respect of people who should have really. One of the things that the mainstream press got wrong about JD Vance, they kept saying, well, what about all the criticisms? What about his past criticisms of Donald Trump? And he had what they didn't understand was that Vance had taken sort of the blood oath. He had said, like, I'm burning my ships. I renounce all of my previous ways, and no one will get to my right. I will be the rightmost figure. I will go past Ted Cruz. I will go past Josh Hawley. I will keep going until I get to whatever the outer limit is. And when you set a new outer limit, I will go there too. And this has made JD Vance a formidable candidate for 2028, because that coalition that's out there are the same people who swung like a wrecking ball into the Republican Party that preferred Marco Rubio 10 years ago. Can JD Vance maintain the good offices of Donald Trump and the favor of Donald Trump while not losing that coalition that now includes a lot of weirdos? I mean, I guess it's probably always included some weirdos, but it's very weird over there. That 15% of the Republican Party that can be so lethal to the ambitions of more mainstream candidates is very demanding and very weird. So for JD Vance, I guess I'll shut up by saying JD Vance has a wolf by the ears, and it's great until you have to let go, and then it eats your face. So he's in a
Yeah.
difficult spot.
It's fascinating to me that you know, on the Democratic side for the presidential you know, race in 2028, it's kind of a jump ball. There's a lot of people in that race. It could go in a lot of different directions. On the Republican side, it feels, at least at this point, almost like a two-person race. Even though, by the way, and those two people are Vance and Rubio. It just doesn't feel like DeSantis or Nikki Haley or Vivek Ramaswamy or or even Donald Trump Jr., who's actually polling in second place. But Vance is so far ahead of of Donald Trump Jr. and also of Marco Rubio. But it's just, for some reason, it feels like a Vance Rubio race. But Chris, I want to point out to our audience that we're going to be taking some live questions at the end of this little discussion. And we're going to put up a QR code on the screen that people can scan if they want to get into the discussion. There it is, that QR code right over your shoulder. People can scan that, and it'll allow you to then get into the program so that you can ask a question, even ask a question on camera if you'd like to join the conversation. I want to ask you about Texas, but first let me just take a brief detour to California. There was a poll this week, Chris, that showed that in the California governor's race, a new candidate has inched into the lead in that crowded field. And his name is Eric Swalwell. Eric Swalwell is now, of course, if you don't count the undecided, which is actually the biggest vote getter there, Eric Swalwell now with 17% of the vote. Steve Hilton, the Republican. Eric Swalwell is the Democrat. Steve Hilton, Republican, with 13%. Tom Steyer, 11. Chad Bianco, the sheriff, with 11. And Katie Porter with 8. And, you know, it's interesting to think of Eric Swalwell as perhaps a governor of California. Obviously, there's a long way to go here. We have to get through the primary first. But you already have seen a controversy about Eric Swalwell's residence.
Yeah.
Does he really live in California?
Yeah.
And Tom Steyer, his fellow Democrat and rival for the nomination, is saying, no, he's just renting a room in some family's house, and he doesn't really live there. He lives in Washington. What is the, and by the way, Katie Porter seems to continue to fade in these polls a little by little. And I think she's maybe still smarting from all of that, you know, I'm mean to my staff stuff that came out, those videos and such. What say you?
So it's a June primary. In the early going, the Republicans were so delighted because, let's say California is 35%. Let's say the California electorate is 35% Republican. I don't know what the number. It might be lower than that. But let's say 35%. They only had two real candidates: the sheriff of Riverside County and Steve Hilton, the former British political guru turned populism enthusiast and Fox News host, the husband of a very wealthy tech executive, and Steve Hilton and his name is, I think you said Blanco, the sheriff, were two splitting up 35, and the Democrats had 10 splitting up 65. And so there was this period where Republicans got very excited because they said, hey, would you look at this? The top two are both Republicans. Maybe the Democrats will get locked out of the primary. And much Republican enthusiasm occurred. Wouldn't it be great if we used California's innovation in its primary system and locked the Democrats out and got there? So Democrats started panicking, correctly started panicking, and saying, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? The state party chairman tried to get people to drop out. More people filed. And the problem really happened. And I think part of the problem for Democrats in California is they can't believe this is all there is. I think if you're a California Democrat, you can't believe that this is what you've got. Gavin Newsom is a national figure. And whether you love him or whether you hate him, he seems like he could be the governor of a state, right? The hair alone, right? And Eric Swalwell is kind of a pre-scandal Anthony Weiner figure, right? He's trolly. He's a member of the House. He's clickbaity.
Didn't he run for president at one point? Didn't he for a minute?
It's possible.
He was
I mean,
flirting with it.
if what was his name? The former mayor of New York City, the
Democrat
tall
or
guy.
Republican? Oh, Bill de Blasio?
Bill de Blasio. If Bill de Blasio can run for president, anybody can run for president. It's a $350 filing fee. I think that the Democrats have been waiting to engage on this, in part because who cares? There's still plenty of time, and also for like, who's the guy? Who is supposed to be the guy? Now, Swalwell is more famous. Katie Porter represents a Los Angeles area district, and Los Angeles is the population center of California. She has higher name ID, and therefore, just being on KTLA a bunch will get you. Who are we voting for? I don't know. I guess that's her. But I don't think Democrats have engaged seriously, but they're starting to. And Swalwell, because of his national presence as this sort of trollish and trolled figure, has emerged as the front runner for Democrats. Now, Tom Steyer is a wild one. The suit over Swalwell's residency is the typical kind of harassing lawsuit that you see. And it's not from Steyer. It's from a right-wing activist who says Eric Swalwell doesn't even really live in California. And of course, Eric Swalwell says, yeah, but I serve in Congress, so I'm in Washington most of the time, but I do have an address in California. I'm registered to vote in California. I'm meeting the spirit of the law because that's what I do. And that Tom Steyer, who has been a pox on the Democratic Party, who has taken his, I just want to say to all the rich people out there, if you don't know how to waste your money, just give it to me. Just give me the money. If you're like, how? I have all these billions of dollars. How will I squander it? I'm here to tell you, I'm going to use it great. You're going to love what I do. Give me $100 million instead of running a doomed campaign for California governor. I'm available. So Tom Steyer, piggybacking on a right-wing activist lawsuit against Eric Swalwell, will not further endear Tom Steyer to the Democratic electorate in California that already was predisposed to dislike him from his own presidential run.
You're talking about piggybacking on the issue of residency?
On the issue of residency.
Yeah, right.
To swoop in and start saying, oh, look, well, maybe he'll be disqualified. We don't know if he'll be disqualified. This is not how you further endear yourself to Democratic voters. And I don't know how it all goes. California's got big trouble ahead. Their ultra wealthy people are fleeing from the state. I don't know that anybody really should want to be the next governor of California, because it could be some pretty rough going for a bunch of reasons. Gray Davises are made, not born. But I don't see this working for Tom Steyer, and I do see Democrats coalescing, and all they have to do is get one Democrat into the runoff and they'll win.
Yeah. Chris, I want to ask about Texas, but first I just want to remind our viewers, if you want to get in on the conversation, you can scan the QR code that's on your screen right now, and you can ask a question of Chris or myself. Hopefully it's Chris, because Chris is smarter and he'll have a better answer, but you can ask either of us. So scan that and join the conversation. Chris, let's talk about Texas. When we last discussed the Texas Republican primary, we talked about John Cornyn, the incumbent Republican senator from Texas, and we talked about Ken Paxton, the Republican attorney general, who is challenging Cornyn for that Senate seat. And we talked about how President Trump 8 or 9 days ago was strongly hinting that he would endorse Cornyn and force Paxton out of the race. Now, just after he said that, Paxton first said, I'm not getting out of the race, but then he said, I'll get out of the race if if the Republicans in Washington basically get rid of the filibuster and pass the Save America Act, which is a voter ID.
Well, it's a lot more than that now.
Okay, it's more than that, but I mean that's ostensibly the starting point of that piece of legislation. I know they've added like transgender stuff to it and other things to it, but tell me where the state of play is now, and do you think I guess this is my question, because in your column you indicated that you thought that when Paxton laid out that offer, like, okay, Mr. President, I'll get out of the race if you get the Republicans to do my bidding. You took that as Trump being tantalized by, oh, maybe I could get a twofer here.
Yeah.
I take it more of Trump saying, oh, I can't get this guy out of the race. He's not going willingly.
You do not.
Tell me how I'm wrong.
You do not.
Either way, it's an interesting choice, but
you do not apprehend the degree to which Donald Trump hates the legislative filibuster. He hates it like God hates sin, because he, like Joe Biden. Now, the parallelism in all of this is that the Republicans are doing exactly what the Democrats did at the beginning of the Biden term. We have a bundle of our base's preferred regulations for state elections, and we're going to nuke the filibuster because it's more important than the democracy is more important than the republic, is basically what both parties have said, right? We don't need this. If the filibuster stops us from having the things that we want, then the filibuster is evil and must be destroyed. And the Democrats did. I forget the cockamamie name that they had for. I think I wrote in the note what turned out to be a wish list from the Brennan Center for Justice for how to conduct American elections. I think it was called the For the People Act.
Okay.
And the Democrats said we must eliminate the filibuster in order to prevent democracy dying in darkness and Republicans stealing democracy from us. And we must do this. And you say, well, hey, Democrats, you've hated the filibuster. Every degradation of Senate procedure, the most significant degradations of the Senate have been at Republicans' hands. Woodrow Wilson, the author of Cloture, who hated Congress and hated the Senate and used the First World War to bend it to his will. Harry Reid helped at Barack Obama's behest and for him nuking the already lowered filibuster for nominees. And then the Republicans, Mitch McConnell, said, if you do that, we're going to punish you. And they did. And they came in and they said, okay, well, now Supreme Court justices are on the list too. And
which allowed Trump to put in three justices in his first term.
Trace.
Because they lowered it from 60 to 51 votes. And that allowed Trump to get those three in.
So Kamala Harris made a huge error in September of 2024 when she was being pressed on this question from progressives who hate the filibuster, as progressives have always hated the supermajoritarian rules of the Senate.
Yeah, it's been the Republicans who have traditionally defended the filibuster.
Yeah, because they're Democrats and democracy, Republicans and republicanism was the old way of being. Yeah. So the Democrats said, will you nuke the filibuster? Do you think that Senate Democrats, because in September they were imagining we'll have the Senate and the presidency and it's going to be great. Will you do it to legislate Roe v. Wade? Is access to elective abortion more important than the filibuster? And Kamala Harris said yes. And Republicans were like, thank goodness you said it. And now we can tell our voters, you better vote you better vote, because these Democrats, they want to get rid of the filibuster that we love. And if they have power, they will make the list of things that Republicans say Democrats will do without the filibuster. They'll do this and they'll do that and they'll do the other thing. So John Cornyn, no one has a better track record as being a small R Republican and a Senate institutionalist that says the Senate is the essential. The Senate is if the Supreme Court is the heart of the republic, the Senate is its lungs, right? The Senate is very, very, very important to the Republican system of government that we have in the United States. And John Cornyn was one of the fiercest defenders of this. So Paxton gave Trump a gift and said, and we can talk about the provisions of the legislation. I think we discussed last week about how pushing voter ID, would be a huge win for Republicans. If Republicans said, yep, it's voter ID, they could probably get 60, right? If they, I don't know that they could, but boy, they could get awful close, picking off 7 Democrats that said, you know what, only 11 states don't have voter ID already. Make it universal. Just do it. For Democrats in swing and red states, it would be pretty appealing. But Republicans said, no. It's not just that. It's also you have to show proof of citizenship to register. Well, what's that? Well, it's a passport. Well, it's a birth certificate. I was, well, this is now you're complicating the state legislative process or the state administration of elections. And they said, and basically we're going to forbid mail-in. We're going to make it functionally impossible to have mail-in elections. Well, 5 states, 6 states already do that. And why should they have to give that up if they like it and it suits them? And then the president slam dunked and came in and said, also the trans thing, which is a perfect example of Republicans not actually wanting to win, and both parties do this, not actually wanting to win, but just wanting the votes on the issue. Yeah. Republicans want to be able to say, Democrats want rigged elections and trans women, trans females playing in girls' sports.
Because they voted against this. Because they want the issue, not the win.
They want the issue, not the win.
Yeah.
And this is endemic of our current system and a problem everywhere and at all times in the United States. So it's not just the Republicans. But Paxton gave Trump a gift, which is, okay, maybe you can have a more radical Senate and not have to spend $100 million or $150 million to win a Texas Senate race, right? Maybe you can deal with the annoyance of Ken Paxton and maximize the pain for the remaining normie senators in the Republican Party. And I think the president's got to love it. Donald Trump is definitely a cake and eat it too kind of person and kind of politician. So if he can have both, right, then why not? So he'll play this one out till the end. Cornyn did what in an earlier political era would be a modified limited hangout and said, well, I'm for filibuster reform, including the talking filibuster. And which is funny because, of course, if you went to many people have said we should bring back the talking filibuster. Okay, I'm not saying it's bad, right? I'm not saying that's the wrong answer, but the talking filibuster would bring the work of the Senate to a halt, right?
Yeah.
The imposition of the legislative filibuster first in 1917, and then they lowered the threshold from what would now be 67 or 66 to 60 in 1975, was they said, well, we got to be able to still do other stuff. And if we're just filibustering,
nothing's going to get done.
So if you brought back the talking filibuster, you know who would love that? Democrats would be very happy to work in shifts to shut down the Senate indefinitely. There is an argument to be made. Jason Willick at the Washington Post has made it. Others have made it. I'm not ruling it out, but that says, you know what? It's a bygone. It's a 19th century idea. We're in the 21st century. You just have to make it a majoritarian Senate so the Senate does more and makes itself more powerful in time. I'm not convinced of that, but that's an argument. The talking filibuster is a cop-out. And but maybe it will be enough. Maybe it will wash, right? right? Maybe this is enough that gives Cornyn the cover to get through and for John Thune to navigate this showdown with the president.
Yeah. Chris, we have a question that's a written question, not an on-air question, from Helen Kamba. I'm going to read it. It says, Chris, we are on the cusp of ramp season. I don't know what that is. My question is, are you going to take Bill down to Fayette, Raleigh County, Fayette, Raleigh County? Maybe it's a misspelling. It's R-E-L-I-G-H. Raleigh County. One Saturday to teach him how to go ramp hunting in the hollows of West Virginia mountains. What is ramp hunting?
Well, first of all, I'm not taking you to Raleigh County because you can't deal with those people down there. You can't. Fayette County, named for the Marquis de Lafayette.
Oh, yes.
And Fayetteville. There are some fine and civilized folk in Fayette County. And if you go to Glen Jean, if you go to many fine places in beautiful Fayette County, you might even go whitewater rafting there if you wanted to. You could go to the Cold Spot. But Raleigh County, that's a land of wolves. That's Beckley. You can't, you go out to Slab Fork. I don't know what had happened. That Bill Withers is from, that's where Bill Withers is. Bill Withers and Robert Byrd.
Lean on me, Bill Withers.
Yep, Bill Withers and Robert Byrd are from the same place in the Gret State of West Virginia.
Wow.
Ramp hunting, we call it. Oh, by the way, we're going to name the hog this weekend on the TV show. We've done the polling work. We've done the research. We've gauged public opinion. And the hog of Whole Hog Politics will have a name.
Are there finalists that we can talk about or no?
One is Abraham Lincoln. One is Alexander Hamilton.
Wow.
I'm partial to James K. Pork. And another one that I liked was Tip Oink Neal. So there are choices, but on Sunday, on the Hill Sunday, we will reveal the name for forever and always.
And I'll be joining you this Sunday.
I know.
I'm excited.
Super exciting. So
Chris, what is
that spirit? I'm going to just say, in the spirit of why we call it Whole Hog Politics, there's also a thing called a ramp dinner. And ramps are wild onions that are somewhere between a garlic and an onion. They're pungent, strong, wild onions. And they grow. So in the fall, there's morel season. You go out looking for mushrooms.
Yeah.
In the hollers. In the spring, you're looking for ramps and you're looking for fiddlehead ferns that you can fry up and are delicious.
Yeah.
And in the summer, in the late summer, you're going for pawpaws, mountain bananas. Those are the most famous and delicious fruits of the forests of Appalachia.
Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
That's right. So I would not take you to Raleigh County, but I would take you ramp hunting. I might even take you up to the real West Virginia. I might take you to the Northern Panhandle. We might go all the way out Big Wheeling Creek, all the way down into Marshall County, and we might look around there. And then I might take you to a ramp dinner that'd be held at some church, and some local politician would stop by. And as his tonsils were being scorched by a mouthful of over-ramped food, that he or she would say, that is mighty, mighty fine.
I love it. Hey, Chris, I think we have a question from one of our viewers named David Hill. David,
where would we be without David Hill? My gosh.
Hey, how are you, David?
The cornerstone of our operation.
Good morning from Fayette County, Kentucky.
There you go.
Hey, there you go. You talk about, I think you want to ask about why we don't spend more time talking about the Georgia governor's race. And also you have some thoughts about whether states, attorneys general and secretaries of state are going to be sort of the stars of the future. Elaborate.
You've got the former Secretary of State of Georgia running for governor. This used to be the way progressions went. And with all this talk of election security and democracy on the ballot and kind of hijinks over elections, I feel like this fall, the nerds are going to have their moment. The secretaries of state and the attorneys general at the state level really have a chance to step forward. So, Jenna Griswold in Colorado, Michael Adams here in my home state was on stage with President Trump during his anti-Massey visit. But those are people that have stood up against the Trump machine on the election issue specifically. So I don't know if you can talk to whether that's something you're watching or maybe we should be paying more attention to.
Well, even though you're from the wrong side of the tug, I think you have the right kind of question. I cited a poll that our colleague Caleb Parker flagged for May in the note about the level of confidence that Americans have in their elections. In the new Marist poll, 34% of Americans say they are not very confident or not confident at all that your state or local government will run a fair and accurate election this November. This is compared to this, 34% is not very many people, but it used to be like 15%. And the way that Americans have lost confidence in their elections started like this. Do you think that the elections are fair where you live? Yeah, I think the elections are fair where I live, but I think those other people in other places have rigged elections, right? So if you look at the survey work from 2020 and 2024, when they asked people, did you think your election was fair? Yes. Do you think that the election was fair nationally? No. So this was the phenomenon about how Congress can have an 18% job approval rating and a 95% incumbency retention rate. I don't like Congress, but I like my congressman. I don't trust elections, but I trust my elections. And now we see that number coming up, right? We see the percentage of Americans who are concerned about this going up. And Republicans, not all Republicans, many Republicans agree with the president that America's elections are thoroughgoing frauds from top to bottom, rife with abuse and cheating, which is not true. Election fraud is real. It's just not very big, right? It's hundreds, not millions. And Democrats are convinced that Republicans are disenfranchising voters, which is true. But again, it's not millions of people. It's not when you change the laws to say, we got you and we're purging the voter rolls and we're doing this stuff. Some people will be unfairly harmed, but historically, it's not enough to change elections. So these grievances have been mainstreamed in the parties, certainly on the Republican side. So I guess that's a very long way to answer your question by saying, Lord, hear my prayer. I hope so, right? I hope that Republican and Democratic secretaries of states, county clerks, local elections officials are prepared for what is going to be a hellacious fight over the results. And people like Brad Raffensperger down in Georgia, who you mentioned, and your own clerk or your own elections officials. Look, it's not fun when the voters in your party say, we think they cheat, so we ought to cheat too, which is basically where we are. When you say, if you believe that cheating is so widespread on the other side, that you not only are you allowed to cheat, no, you must cheat. It is essential for the country that you cheat. And this goes back to everything I was just saying about the filibuster, right? If you define down your definition of acceptable behavior, not by what the other side does even, but what the other side might do and how wicked and iniquitous you think they are and how evil these people think they are, then you might just do anything. And this is the problem where we are. So if you love America, send a box of donuts to your local elections office. Tell them you're praying for them. Say you hope they do a great job and that you believe in them, because they're going to need your support, because they're going to be right there on the devil's anvil.
Great question, David. Chris, before we run out of time, I want to remind viewers again that you are the host of the Hill Sunday.
It's amazing.
Which is the political talk show on Sunday morning, Eastern, 10 a.m. Eastern, on News Nation. I have the privilege of being able to join your panel this week, but surely you must have other things about the show. And of course, naming the hog is big, but
that'd be enough. What else do you want?
That's enough right there.
Bill Sammon and name the hog. I mean, come on. Many people are saying it's the best Sunday show in America hosted by a man. And we'll see how it goes. No, we have Vice President Mike Pence is going to join us.
Wow.
We have Rick Crawford. He is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. And we have a Democrat who I can't say their name yet, but we do. We have a high quality Democratic member who will be there to give the other side from the chairman's point of view. Pence is a real interesting figure on all this. You saw the piece that basically said Mike Pence is the best spokesman for the Iran war, and he's not even in the administration.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to sort of wrestling around with some of that with the former vice president. Also, we've got the panel that you described, in which I believe I can say that it's you and it's Sabrina Siddiqui from the Wall Street Journal.
Oh, great.
Yes, and our friend Margaret Talev, formerly of Every Place in Washington, who's now of Syracuse University. So we will have a robust. Oh, and the almanac is. Mwah, you are going to it's going to be so good you can't even, but you will not be able to stand how good the almanac is this week.
Well, I want to squeeze in one last topic if we could do this quickly, Chris, because we touched on it last week, and that is the topic of Markwayne Mullin, who is the nominee to replace Kristi Noem as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. He's coming up for his confirmation hearing this coming week. And the reason I mention that is because the chairman of the committee that is going to consider him is a guy named Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. And I believe we have a quote from Mullin about Paul. Here it is. Quote, "I respect Bernie Sanders because he's an open socialist and you know that he's a communist. So you know what you're getting. Rand Paul's a freaking snake. And I understand completely why his neighbor did what he did. And I told him that to his face," end quote. That's from Markwayne Mullin. By the way, he's referring to an incident. Yeah. Rand Paul's neighbor assaulted him and broke several of his ribs. So we talked last week about Mullin's sort of MMA energy. Is he going to pass the Senate in terms of being confirmed as DHS? And how will Rand Paul handle him?
So Markwayne Mullin said that and I don't think he said it to, maybe he said it to a reporter. I don't remember.
Reporter. Yeah, it was a profile.
It was a profile, and it was an off the cuff remark. And I've heard other senators off the record. I've heard other people say it, right? And Donald Trump, of course, Rand Paul makes him crazy, right? Because Rand Paul is like, who loves the Senate? Rand Paul loves this. I don't think he likes being in the Senate, but he loves the institution.
He's an institutionalist.
The small r republicanism of the Senate, in which the Senate says, no. That the job, Tom Coburn famously, they called him Dr. No. The conservative idea about the Senate is like, no, try again. You'll have to keep trying. If you want to do it, you'll have to keep trying. So he drives Trump crazy. I would suspect that Markwayne Mullin will not only get every Republican, he might even pick off a couple Democrats. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? I don't.
I think Fetterman has already said he'll support him.
Well, it's asterisks. The Fettermanian asterisk is now required, but there might even be other Democrats. There might even be other Democrats, and I highly doubt. I know that Rand Paul might gig him on this, right? Yeah. He might gig him on this, but I can't imagine that Paul would take a serious approach on this, nor can I imagine that Senator Mullin wouldn't have a way to say, I get fired up, I get mad about, you and I have disagreed very, very often about key things. I understand, but I respect your service to Kentucky and I respect your service to the country, which would be the correct and politic thing to say.
Yeah, probably something along the lines of, he probably said something like that to Sean O'Brien, the head of the Teamsters, and he wanted to roll in the dirt with that guy too, but now they're pals. So maybe
I wouldn't have said it if I didn't respect you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Folks, that's all the time we have. Again, I'm Bill Sammon, joined by my old pal, Chris Stirewalt. We both work at The Hill and News Nation, but only Chris is the author of Whole Hog Politics. So until next week, take care, and we'll see you on the next exciting episode of Whole Hog Politics.
Suey.